Hey, welcome to it's the first Gypsy Moto Remote. I'm Aaron Lally with Landon Wilhite, common Gypsy Moto user for many, many years, and also, as you can see, a Yamaha lover. So we won't hold that against him. So Landon was in the club when we bought the new land and when we developed the new track. Landon and I spent a lot of hours together, kind of burning in new lines for what might have been the track. Some of them stayed, some of them are gone. But yeah, we definitely had the joy of picking up some of those new lines, just kind of looking for good turn angles or turn radiuses and angles. Landon's really good at that because he's got great fundamentals. So, and he was also there during sort of the School of Mines era, the School of Mines. So, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you landed at the Gypsies in the first place.
Yeah, so I'm kind of a nomad at the end of the day. I grew up in Kansas City side of things. My dad's always been on two wheels of motocross, so from an early age, trying to take the PW into the side of the house, it was always an adventure with him. So grew up racing with him all across the Midwest, and as soon as it came time to decide on, where I was going to go in life, for me, trying to find a degree field that was going to suit myself or what my interests were at the time. And funny enough, I've been a kid that always plays around in the dirt. So when it came to mining engineering, and there's only a handful of schools in the United States, did a trip up to South Dakota School of Mines, fell in love with the department, fell in love with the program, fell in love with the Black Hills, and it was a great time to spend basically the 4.5/5 years I was up there, in my young adult life. But in conjunction with that, I stopped racing in 2013, right before the year I went to college, just to make sure I didn't get hurt, make sure I didn't do anything stupid that was going to justify, not making it up there for my freshman year. And, I can say this, starting off with the Jack Pine Gypsies open practice and that September 2015 day, meeting with Aaron and everyone else at the SD Mines, it was something that was, really blessed to find the community out there and really tailor the love and passion of two wheels and continue that on all the way to today. But some of the funnest times I've ever had, putting my leg over a dirt bike and spinning a lot of mud and dirt and dust, was spent at that track in the 5 years we were up there together. So.
Yeah, what's funny about Landon too is, so I taught at the School of Mines in the mechanical engineering department, and there was a huge group of guys that kind of started this dirt biking club that were all mostly in the ME department, partly because of the program they had there at the time called CAMP, which kind of brought in racing guys. And Dr. Nolan kind of set that up. But what's funny is I was connected to those guys, and right away Spencer Johnson in particular, he's one of my first students. He was super interested in dirt bikes and just kind of got the ball rolling. But what's funny is I almost never saw Landon at campus. Landon and I rode with each other 2-3 days a week, but on campus never saw him because he was in a different department. So, but luckily we had that club at the time we on. And maybe that was to me a really unique thing what happened with that group of riders, guys and gals, but that was to me super fun, and there were so many of those riders that are still at it. So it really had the right mentality maybe for bringing in new riders. And maybe Landon, you want to talk a little bit about, because you weren't one of the new people, but most of the people were new.
Yeah.
So maybe talk a little bit about the group dynamic with riders.
Yeah, it was an interesting time when you put a bunch of nerds together that really aren't used to leaving a cold, dark room in their dorm room and try to get them outside to do some stuff. And we were an interesting group. So for myself, like Aaron mentioned, I was on the complete opposite side of campus. I didn't see anyone in the club, I don't think, a single day or school day of the entire year, but we got ourselves together 2 to 3 times a week to go out and kind of enjoy the hills and enjoy the Gypsies Moto track. But the dynamic was very interesting. So you would have people out there that had been riding for a while, maybe not necessarily in a track format or really tailored towards hair scrambles, or just, hey, I bought a bike on Craigslist, I'm going to go up and down the road with a couple of my buddies. So we had a unique group at the time that always seemed to be ever changing as the years kind of went on. And obviously, as the winter kind of worked itself in, you'd have people that'd be really interested to kind of get up and ride. And you get people that were like, man, my buddy's out there riding. I'm going to go pick up a bike and try to learn it. And, you know, that's the really nice thing about our group, and especially the area that we got to ride in with the hills is, you know, the Black Hills, the Farmingdales, the Badlands, and then obviously Gypsy Moto. There was so much variety in what we could kind of do out there. And for us, it was really more or less a community in terms of getting together as a group and getting together to share the passion of two wheels, working on bikes together, figuring out issues with each other. And, you know, with the mechanical engineers that were part of the department, I know that tailored a huge portion into their senior design, their studies. And especially for me, you know, the way that I look at the community we built, it was a release at the end of the day. Obviously, we would be coarse in saying SD Mines isn't one of the more challenging universities in the United States in terms of the stress that we put and the workload that we put on our students. And for myself, you know, my favorite time of the week was anytime I got to go drive up to Sturgis with these fine folks and swing my leg over a dirt bike for a couple hours and just put everything to the side when it came to studies or anything from a personal life and just really use it as a mental release. So I think everyone kind of utilized the community and the club that we built in a very unique fashion to get the most out of it. The camaraderie, the friendships that, you know, we have to this day, and even after I've graduated in 2019, we still keep in touch today, you know, 7 years later. So, and like you mentioned, everyone's still enjoying the two wheels. Some of us have moved on maybe to non-powered bikes like mountain bikes or street, but at the end of the day, it's a community we're still all a part of.
And the e-bike thing is pretty popular with engineers. In fact, there was in that group, there was a couple of guys that did an e-bike with technology that to me has never been repeated, and I think it's really going to be fundamental to the success. But, you know, one of the things Landon mentioned there is just is that we meet at the track. And another thing, it was something they all look forward to. One of the things that was really cool about that group, to me, I've ridden with a lot of different groups, was when we started going up there, I would let everybody in, and I kind of managed the waivers and the fees and all that, and it was just kind of a unique situation. But what was kind of cool is after the first couple of times, they figured out that I was going up early to do a little bit of prep, you know, and I enjoyed track prep, you know. I really been fortunate at the Gypsies to learn a lot. But anyway, the guys are like, "What time you going up?" And so they would show up and help with prep. And so when you have, say, if we had 10 to 15 people showing up, but you have 5 of them show up 2 hours early, so we could throw down some water and do a little digging. Like, we had like pretty primo tracks most of the time, and I think that was really a neat situation where like the riders just kind of volunteered. We're going to show up and work our asses off. And in fact, we ended up stepping over a couple of lines there with what we were doing with equipment, and that was kind of another story. But definitely that was unique about that group, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think it goes to tailor, you know, the work ethic that comes behind with not only our group, but, you know, a large portion of the community that is two wheels and, you know, down to earth, salt of the earth, you know, whatever you want to call it. But just being willing to go out there and help your fellow brother and to try to make something better and leave it in a better condition than what we found it is, you know, the one thing I'm so proud of with the community that we built out there, because it was a mentality that, you know, the expectation was we don't get out there on the bikes until every single one of us have gone through the track a couple times. You know, we probably moved a few short tons of rocks just out of certain sections of the track ourselves. You know, that was the old saying out there, is how many rocks you get picked off today. Well, I know I got my pre-workout in because my back's already hurting with a couple of them that we got to move out there. But yeah, it was kind of like lightning in a bottle with the group that we had out there, and you know, the fun that we had really putting in the fundamentals and the foundation of what the current layout is today. You know, a lot of it can be traced back to us out there with a couple of the yellow markers saying, you know what, I wonder how this flow is going to work out here. Let's try the apex in this kind of direction. Or, you know what, Hangtown had a pretty cool half pipe setup out here, so let's try to make this work down here in the valley. And you know, it was a really fun time with a fun group of individuals, and you know, I think that's the thing I really tailor towards is the mindset and the attitude of leave it better than what we found it. And as much as we would all love to say we could have been out there the entire year, and I know some of us kind of stuck around with the hills and no one else like myself is just kind of nomaded away, but it's always something that is fun to go back to and really enjoy those memories when we are back there in Sturgis.
Yeah, and it's funny, Landon mentioned picking rocks. Like I probably got, like say Landon, Landon kind of developed the system for moving the rocks from the track over to a different place, and I mean we literally picked tons and tons of rocks. But and everybody knows what that's about. But when we would take the rocks and throw them, at the time I always had this big German Shepherd, Finn. He went everywhere with me. And so we'd throw the rocks and Finn would play fetch. He'd go grab them. He'd put them back where we picked them up, which was back on the track.
Yeah.
And so after Landon yelling at him for a month or so, he figured it out. And he would, when we were picking rocks, he would pick rocks off the track and carry them to the edge. So the best, I should have videoed it because he's the only rock picking dog I've ever seen. But you know, one other thing, we're down here in Tacona, IMI, and near Denver, and this is, you know, one of the great things about that group, or any moto group, is you make these friends. So I'm on my way out to California to visit my son, and so I thought I'd swing in here, ride with Landon. We've done this a couple times before here and there. That's one of the great things about it. But Landon, maybe you want to talk a little. Landon has, you know, I've known Landon for a long time, and he's definitely seen the progression of moto since he was maybe 30 years old, been riding for 27 years or something. And maybe talk a little bit about the progression of the tracks and what you like to see, where you think it's going, what you think is the future, because you definitely have some thoughts.
Yeah, I think, you know, I basically swung my leg over a PW50, ran the bike into the side of the house, took a couple months off when the parents were willing to trust me with throttle response, and, you know, from there, my dad took me all around the country. So I was blessed with an opportunity to ride on the slick blue group, hard pack tracks of Kansas, cutting my teeth into there, to the loamy, deep ruts of Missouri, all the way down to the red dirt, clay, and the heat of Texas and Oklahoma. So I spent the better part of about a decade racing down there, all the way through the age group classes, schoolboys, getting all the way up to intermediate before I was getting my ass kicked too much on a 125 in the 4-stroke revolution, where I was starting to not have as much fun showing up on third place every weekend. But overall for me, when it comes to the progression, I've had the blessed opportunity to be able to work with you guys and Gypsy's track in Sturgis, going over to the Powder Basin, down to Casper at Boomtown, and I've even had the opportunity in my travels when I worked and lived in Boston for about 3 years, you know, seeing the track development all across the country, seeing the rider progression, and even as we're sitting here today in Colorado, I mean, the regionality and the real emphasis on, there's a lot of people out here with 2 wheels, but everyone rides a little bit different. Everyone pushes a little bit harder in certain areas. And then on top of that, the tracks kind of lay themselves out overall to get the most out of what they're trying to get at the end of the day. And, you know, I think my favorite areas that I've been able to ride in the U.S. really are in New England. And you think about, you know, when the sport was founded, you had 2 separate entities. You had the West Coasters and the East Coasters. So you had everyone down there in Southern California. You had everyone in New England that was blitzing through trails through Middleborough at the end of the day to really work through and make a nice community up there. And a lot of the tracks, I mean, you can talk about the WIC 338 all the way up to NX 207 in Maine, that there's so many tracks in between in that area that are really designed and tailored to the conditions that they work in. And, you know, out there, it's a really sandy kind of loamy soil, and I've ridden in tracks that are even sandier than Southwick out there, that are basically on Cape Cod in the sand, and you're pushing through beach sand, through sand bogs out there, all the way to the hard packed nature of New Hampshire. And the way they design their tracks is really tailored to just every single skill group and every single age group. And that's the one thing I love so much about, you know, the community out there, is that they've been around for so long. I mean, these tracks have been around for, you know, close to 40, 50 years in some cases, and they've really developed themselves through the 2-stroke era, the 4-stroke era, and nowadays when we're pushing to the EV bikes, to where they try to make everything fun, everything is safe, but everything's fast flowing. And the one thing that I always love to say that separates the really good riders from the bad riders, and especially you can even say the two-strokers from the four-strokers, and the style of riding you got to approach with those different bikes, is how the track breaks down and how well are you when you start getting into acceleration bumps, braking bumps. When it was a straightaway, 30 minutes before, and now it's a whoop section at the end of the day. And that was the most fun out there because you can really tailor yourself and separate yourself at the end of the day. But it was as hard as you wanted to push it. So you push it to yourself to where you felt comfortable. All the jumps were safe because of that. And then you look at places like coming out here to Colorado where everything's booter central. Like we have the National out here at Thunder Valley, and they do a really good job with the prep out there, but the track's really designed and tailored for a 450 in mind, to where third gear taps, seat downs, trying to get yourself up 60, 70 feet up in the air for a 100-foot triple. And, you look at a lot of it nowadays where you tailor yourself to the D riders that are just getting started out all the way to your A riders. And everyone's got a different objective at the end of the day. But, the biggest thing is we all want to go home safe. We all want to go home with a smile on our face. And, I think a lot of the tracks, especially in the Midwest, even out here, they really get the idea of they got to have the biggest jump in the area. They got to have the Larocco's leap, to where, that's the jump everyone wants to hit. But at the end of the day, that's just something that psychs people out, to where, you think about it the entire day. Maybe you're going to hit it. Maybe you don't have the skill set to hit it. You give it a shot, and the next thing you know, you're off the bike for 2 months because you came up a little bit shorter, a little bit too long. So,
and there are those tracks like Mankato and Meadow Valley and Minnesota, the ones I'm familiar with. I don't know any of the East Coast tracks. But then also, say, Lincoln, but definitely Sturgis, where it's like, it's big stuff, but it's fun and it's safe. And that, I after everything Landon's seen, I really do want to get out to New England before too long.
Yeah. It's a good destination. Everyone says Southern California is the place to be, but man, you dip into some of the history out there to where, back in the day, the pros would show up from Southern California and get absolutely waxed by the local guys. And It's always fun watching the Southwick National and see how many locals are up there riding with the big boys and embarrassing everyone, because, man, it's a different animal and you're in their house at the end of the day.
And there's got to be so many riders.
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the reasons, like Minnesota D23, so there's fast guys over there because there's so many people.
Yeah.
And they do have a lot of great tracks. And that, the upper Midwest, it seems like D23, Minnesota, that's where all the fast guys are coming from.
And the biggest thing, they're open. They're open not only just on the weekends, but certain weekdays. They'll do unprep days, they'll do prep days. I mean, and here's the thing, as long as the track's open, like, hell, I'm willing to pay upwards of $40 to ride a really good, safe track. And, that's the other thing nowadays that, I kind of harp on Colorado a lot, because the conversation of split practices is something that I really think a lot of people don't really understand the safety aspect of it. Because when you get someone like myself that's an A rider out there in the track and trying to weave and wob around the D riders, the 50s that are just getting started out there, and the next thing you know, just track awareness just seems to be, and common sense goes out the door as soon as you get out to an open practice with 100 bikes. It gets a little sketchy. I mean, you can talk about how pros have all moved away from Southern California because they won't do split practices, but one thing they do in New England, they split everyone up by their gap, and if no one's clearing the jumps, they flag them off and put them in a different class at the end of the day.
We do that in Sturgis too, and it's just common sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot to expect for people to completely police themselves.
And here's the expectation, we put a lot of time, effort, and money in to enjoy this sport. I mean, it's not a cheap sport at the end of the day. I mean, maintaining and buying these bikes, and, especially just trying to stay healthy and making sure you have the right gear, and then waking up early to show up on a track to have maybe 4 hours of track time. I mean, it sucks when you get your time limited, but at the end of the day, I would much rather be riding safe with people of my skill level, and obviously having a fun time out there than trying to just wonder if I'm going to be able to clear every jump in the track because someone's not laying down on the other end.
Yeah, think about, as you went through that, I just kind of remember going to Mankato all those times, and you basically get 15 minutes out of the hour ride, and if you're just looking at it on paper, it seems like, oh dang, but once you get out there and do it, like the quality of the practice is so much better.
Yeah.
And it is safer, I mean, obviously. But it's also, like, that's enough.
It is.
Then basically each session is quality. Any other last goofy things you want to tell us about the riding at Sturgis? Anything particularly stand out about? Because you were there when we went from the little track to the new area. And
Yeah, I think, I smile ear to ear every time that I get up there. Like, you can be cheesy about the location, but just the history of Sturgis nonetheless, and you just being able to pull off, the side of I-90, go out there and lay some motos down, and starting back, like you mentioned, when the track was really small, we were confined in that little fenced area. I mean, using as much of the natural terrain as you can get, being very one line, and basically when you would race out there, whenever you started is usually how you would finish at the end of the day, unless you were willing to get a little too aggressive with people. But the fun thing that I really love about the effort and the work, and obviously the community that's built itself out there in the last decade, is the amount of pride that we have in terms of continuing to elevate ourselves, not settling. And I think that attitude of just being like, man, we're gonna try something out and kind of see how this works, and then just keep continuing to look like, talking about moving the starting gate, like when we first got out there in 2015, and seeing that finally happen this year. I mean, it's been years of development and years of work with like the water system and stuff like that. Like the amount of time that we were busting our butt like before a race day trying to get out there in water and move a couple miles of hose all around the track, and then be like, damn, we're gonna soak the track and practice is gonna be the muddiest SOP that you can probably have out there. And then by the end of the day, you're just trying to make do with the water truck, with how dry and hard packed it would get. It's like just seeing the level of commitment and the investment that we put into a facility like that, which really should be the shining example, not on the hill, no far intended, for the motocross community in that area, and really carry the flag. And I think what's so special and goofy is that we got to be there at the ground level with the communities there today, and really seeing in the background with me living in New England and living in Colorado, and just seeing the change and how much investment and how much the community has really appreciated that, and looking at the comments and seeing the riders every single weekend. I mean, it really makes me feel good that the time that we spent up there, the community that we built, maybe something like that could potentially happen again out there, and to continue to grow up with the generations that are under us. I'm graduating up to the vet class this year, and while my body might not feel like it, my wallet definitely feels it. So I'm excited to continue to grow the culture and to continue to grow the sport, and excited being out here in Colorado now that I'll get to experience a lot more of that at Sturgis, and really see the tried true testament of everyone's hard work out there.
Well, should we go burn a few laps?
I think we should. 300 days of sun in Colorado a year. We need to get one of them in. So.
Right.